Hi friends, it's Holly Jones from Mrs. Jones Stitches. Welcome to this floss tube extra. This is FAQ, frequently asked questions. So in my previous video, floss tube number 55, I opened up the floor at the end and I asked in the comments if you had any questions to leave them below and I would answer them. So instead of answering them at the beginning of my regular floss tube video, and I realized it was going to make the video go really long. So what I decided to do was take all those questions and do a special FAQ question and answer session. So I printed off all the questions. It took 2 pieces of paper. It was a lot. I just kind of compiled them all together, and here we are. So I'm going to answer the questions and we'll visit for a little bit. There's not a giveaway or anything like that. The winners for the previous giveaway will be in floss tube number 56, which I will film this week and hopefully get that up there. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first question I got was, what stuffing do you use for your pillows? And I use a couple different things. I use wool roving. This is what the box looks like. I get this on Amazon. You can just type in wool roving and this should pop up. I want to say this was $15 to $20. Inside, it looks like this. And you can take it out, you can pinch off some. What I normally do is I take some out and then I kind of take my fingers and just kind of pull it apart a little bit, and then I restuff it. That way there's not any clumps or lumps, anything like that. The other thing I use is I use crushed walnut shells. So you can get these at your quilt shop. You can also order these online. This runs about $10. If you want a cheaper option, which is what I usually do, you can go on Amazon and you can just search for crushed walnut shells. And the bag I buy is actually like a bird litter kind of bag. It's a pretty big bag. It's, you know, this big and this big. It kind of looks like a bag of dog food, but it's crushed walnut shells. It is identical to this, and that bag is $12 to $15, and this bag here is $10. And you could probably get, I don't know, you could probably get 6 or 8, maybe even more than that, of these bags in that other bag. So the bigger bag is a much better deal. I actually had a bag down here to show you, and I started filming this video, and as I was holding it up, part of the seam ripped and crushed walnut shells just went everywhere. So I ended up putting my hand over it and running it into the kitchen, and I put it in a big bowl. And as soon as I get done filming here, I'm gonna have to end up transferring it into like a huge Ziploc bag or something, because it was everywhere. So I'm gonna have to vacuum too, so that'll be fun. But anyway, wool roving and walnut shells. Now in this pillow here, I used both. So after I was done sewing the pillow, I have an opening here on the bottom, and I turn the pillow upside down, and I just use a little funnel, like a kitchen size funnel that I put in the top, and then I use like a, I don't know, a 1/3 of a cup measuring cup, and I pour the walnut shells in the funnel, and then it goes in the pillow. That way I'm not making a mess. So I put walnut shells here in the bottom, so it's in the corner, and then I have wool roving, and then I have some more walnut shells and more wool roving, and then I ended it with walnut shells. And then I put wool roving kind of right at the top. So whenever I stitched it, I was stitching kind of like the wool roving in. Then what I do is I just kind of take my hands and I just really like massage and like work the shells and the roving together in the pillow, so I get a good solid pillow. What I don't want is I don't want it to be, you know, I don't want them to separate. So that's how I do it. You do what works for you, but that's what works for me. This one is not overly full or anything like that. I do still need to stitch on the chenille around here, which usually covers up my, you know, little opening that I stitched shut. So how many whips do you currently have? My comfortable spot is about 3. I usually like to have 1 bigger project that I'm working on, and then 2 kind of small things. So my big piece right now is Mary Bovey, and that's a stitch along that I'm hosting with Nicole Spohr. And I ended up doing a restart. I was stitching on a darker fabric, and it had a very tight weave, and I'll be honest, it was really not enjoyable for me to work on. I like using 2 strands when I stitch, and the weave was so tight that I was using 1 strand, and I don't love stitching with 1 strand unless I'm using sulky. But I was really unhappy with how it was looking, and it was really hard for me to get motivated to want to work on it because I love the chart. But when you're not using fabric and linen or fabric and thread that you like, it was really not fun for me. So I did switch. This is Pearled Barley by Lakeside. I love it. So I've been working on this. I have part of the border done here, and I started on a little bit of the alphabet and some of the inner border right there. Very enjoyable to work on. So I'm working on this. I'm also working on this small. This is America from Emily Call. I just have a little bit more to go. I have a little zigzag right here, and then, excuse me, I need to finish this little flower, and then this piece will be done. So I'm not sure if I'm going to turn this into a pillow or if I'm going to do a little frame. I'm not sure yet, but anyway, we're going to reference this piece here again later in the video because somebody asked a question. I'm going to use that as an example. So usually about 2 to 3 things. I actually have another small I'm going to start this weekend because it's going to be really pretty. I get inspiration from just everyday things, and I actually got the inspiration for this next piece from a bag that it was like a reusable bag that I saw at Home Goods. So I bought the bag, and as soon as I got home, I was digging through my charts because I knew that the bag would inspire me to stitch on something else. So I get my stitching inspiration from all sorts of things. But I think that's one thing I love about this hobby is that I can see something, whether it's a color palette or, you know, a pattern of fabric or something, and then it inspires me, and I'm like, how can I incorporate elements from that into my stitching? So I may share what my inspiration is for this piece later in the video when I answer another question, but I'm excited to share that with you. What pattern is the flag in the tiered tray? So last video I showed my patriotic tiered tray, and I'm pretty sure that this is the pattern you're probably talking about. This is a freebie from Plum Street Samplers. It's probably 10 years old. I got it off her blog. Now, if you go on Google and you search Plum Street Sampler blog, you will find Paulette's blog. Now, the blog hasn't been updated in a number of years, but on the right column, I believe, there are like links and stuff, and one of them said freebies or free charts, and you can click on that, and she has a ton of free charts there that you can print. So anyway, this was one of them. Like I said, it's probably 10 years old, but I stitched this in kind of my faded vintage colorway. I know that my blue was Wintertide. I'm pretty sure my red is Winterberry and my white is Old Lace. And I did just a turquoise gingham here on the back. And I did a kind of a turquoise blue rickrack as well. So that's this one. Another freebie that was on her blog, and it's called Happy Birthday, Mr. President, is this one right here. And I stitched this, again, a number of years ago. I think this is on Ren by Picture This Plus. And it was actually made for George Washington's birthday. And I changed it. I did 1776 down here. So it was Happy Birthday, kind of America, and not necessarily George Washington's birthday. And it says hip hip hooray. But I love these two. These are probably 2 of my favorite little small pillows. And I love having patriotic out. I think I really want to have a display where I leave patriotic out all year somewhere. But anyway, just a really fun little pillow. And this one on the back is just some red and white ticking stripes. Okay, let's see. What is your favorite color in cotton floss color? So my favorite is a color called Viridian. It is a special edition color. It's not made anymore. I bought several skeins of it because I knew I loved it so much. You can't get it anymore, but I will show you the color. Let me grab my questions here. It is a really pretty kind of gray blue. Yeah. Anyway, I love this color. It's really similar to DMC 927, but I love it. The variegation in here is really pretty, and it's just a really prim kind of gray blue. Anyway, I love this. I think I have this full skein, and I think I have maybe one half skein left. So I really hoard this for really special things because I know once it's gone, it's gone. So, okay. What were the colors you used on the JBW stitch? So I believe you're talking about this piece here. This was Fleur de Noël from JBW, which was a Christmas chart. It was stitched in kind of a monochromatic colorway. On the chart, it was kind of a dark mauve and a lighter pink. And then inside it was stitched in a green colorway, and I kind of colorized it in a spring color palette. It looked really springy to me. So I can tell you some of the colors I used. I used Gretel, which is my go-to pink. I used Mesquite. Basically, this was my same floss palette that I used for a daily reminder, minus a few colors. So let me look on my Instagram because I shared it there, and I have already put those flosses away. So let me look so I can tell you. Cosmo floss number 853 was my kind of darker salmon pink. So that's what like the F is done in here. Mesa, which is a really light pink. Did I use Mesa? Yes. I'm sorry, I did not use Gretel. I used Mesa. It was this light pink here. Toasted Marshmallow was my gold. Mesquite is my green. Pistachio is this really light blue here. Beanstalk was this kind of, it's kind of a minty turquoise. Hansel is what I used the M for, which is kind of a medium turquoise. And then Tambourine was this darker kind of turquoise blue. So I still need to find a frame for this. I took it to Hobby Lobby, and you know, Hobby Lobby is where I get most of my stuff framed. They've always done an excellent job for me. But I feel like I've used a lot of the frames that I want to use. So I think I might try Michael's or maybe another local frame shop to me. But I love this, just to see some different frame options. So I don't really know what I want to do with this. I know I want something that is really feminine, just because there's so many like swirls and flourishes and stuff in here. So I definitely want to carry on that kind of feminine, romantic kind of vibe with the frame. Okay, next question. What was the name of the chart you shared where your friends were stitching their initials? That is Our Lasting Friendship from Blackbird Designs. And the chart itself is a larger piece. And then in the middle, there is a rectangle piece that has a border, and the inside says, "May this be a token of our lasting friendship." So what we decided to do was we decided to just stitch this inside rectangle. Now I'm stitching this. It was me, Nicole Spohr, our friend Lori, and our friend Karen. And so we all used very similar colors. I decided to do my house in blue. I think Nicole and Lori did their house in pink. And then I stitched my initials here. Lori and Nicole did, they did not stitch their initials in one of these cartouches. They, you know, stitched an L right here or an N. That way it opens up an extra cartouche for an extra friend. I didn't think about doing that. I did debate whether or not I wanted to pick this out and then stitch like a script H right here, which would open this cartouche up for somebody else, but it was fine. I don't want to unpick anything. So I'm fixing to send this off. And I used color and cotton on this as well. And this is Picture This Plus Fog in 32 count. So I did use 2 strands. I'm really happy with how it turned out. And I don't know how I'm going to finish it yet. I really want to do a frame. I think Nicole said she might finish hers in a pillow, but I'm not really sure yet. Okay. How long have you been stitching? So my mom taught me how to cross stitch when I was in 6th grade. So I was probably 10 or 11 years old, and my mom used to stitch, and she would stitch in the evenings while we watched TV. And she stitched on Aida, like a 28 count Aida, and she just used DMC floss. So I remember sitting with her and watching her, and she taught me how to stitch. And my first things I stitched were like really easy, like Lizzie Kate patterns. She did buy me some stamped cross stitch stuff. I remember from Walmart, they used to have these like baby bibs that were stamped, and I remember stitching those and giving them to my aunt because my aunt had a baby. And but yeah, I stitched Lizzie Kate stuff. I've kind of stitched off and on since I was 11 or 12 years old. I'd get into it for a little while, and then I would stop. Something else would kind of pique my interest. But probably for the last, probably for the last 10 years, I've been back into stitching. I've got a lot of stuff. I've got a lot of stash, and it's just kind of my happy hobby to do in the evenings. I find it to be really relaxing. It's something that I can do and not make a mess. It's not like I've got, paints everywhere or pottery or anything like that. It's very portable, and I like that. So I can sit and watch TV with my family or a movie, and I can still be there, be part of everything that's going on, but I always have my hands doing something. What is your favorite floss brand and why? So I've been a devoted Color and Cotton fan for a number of years. And that was probably the most questions I got was about my Color and Cotton thread. And how did I get started using it? Why do I like it? So I'll just kind of answer all those in one. So when I was stitching, I always stitched with DMC because when I was a kid, that's what my mom would buy me. She was not about to spend, $250 on a skein of fancy floss. So I always stitched with DMC. So anyway, once I got older and had my own money and my own job, and I could decide what I wanted to spend my money on, I would buy skeins of fancy floss. And I love the look that it gives my pieces. I love the variegation. I just think it's really lovely to work with. Being, younger and on a budget, one of the things I loved about Color and Cotton, a number of years ago was the floss originally was like $2.50 a skein, and it was 8-yard skeins. So I got more floss for the same amount of money as some of the other hand-dyed. They're in 5-yard skeins, and this was 8-yard skeins. So I felt like I got more bang for my buck that way. I joined the Color and Cotton Floss of the Month Club, and I was getting floss sent to me every month. And I didn't really know what I was going to do with it, so I just kind of collected it and hoarded it. Well, then I would find a chart that I liked, and I was like, oh, I want to stitch this. And, I would turn it over and I'd look at all the called for colors. And of course I didn't have any of those because I just didn't have them. But I did have Color and Cotton from the Floss Club. So then I started kind of tinkering around, and, something might call for a red. So then I was looking through my Color and Cotton reds, like what is similar to what the picture looks like on the chart. So that's how I started doing my own color conversions, was I was using what I had. I wasn't, I'm going to use this chart here as an example because it was in my giveaway pile. So let's say like this chart here. So I would see a color, and let's say it was Louisiana hot sauce. So we can look at this and tell that it's, a brighter kind of deep red. So then I would go through my Color and Cotton drawers, and I would look for a deep red and kind of hold it up, look at the chart. I'm like, well, that will probably work. Okay, now I was looking for a yellow. So then I'd look through my yellows, find a yellow that I thought would work. So that's how I started doing conversions, was I was looking at the chart and then looking at what I had. That way I wasn't having to go out and buy something extra. And it just kind of took off from there. So I've been in the Floss Club since 2015 or 16. And sadly the Floss Club ended this last December, January. So the Floss Club itself is no more. The good news is you can still order from their website at colorandcotton.com. So that's what I do. I've got thousands of skeins of Color and Cotton. And I know my go-to colors now because I've been using them for so long that I know I love mesquite for my green. I love, Wintertide, Ferris wheel, love bug for my reds. I really love marigold and Goldilocks for my yellows, things like that. So I just kind of, when you see them and you touch them and you use them a lot, you kind of know their names and what they look like. So that's kind of how I started getting into color and cotton. Now I do have a lot of other stuff too. I've acquired over the years, whether it's going to garage sales, estate sales, acquiring stashes, purchasing kits, things on Facebook Marketplace. I have a lot of Weeks and Classic Colorworks and Gentle Arts threads that have come in kits and things like that. So especially if a color really stumps me, I'll pull the called for, that, the pattern is stitched with, and then I'll take it and I'll go through my color and cotton and see what do I have that's similar. And usually I can find something. I think there's been very few times that I've ever not been able to find something comparable. I have some Roxy Flossco floss that I really like. It's really silky. It's really nice too. So I kind of stitch with a little bit of everything, but most of the time it's color and cotton because it's just what I have. Where do you get color and cotton fabric, and can you order a fat quarter? So Color and Cotton did get rid of their floss club, but they still have their fabric club. So I get a fat quarter of fabric every month. I'm in the neutral club. There's two clubs. There's neutral and then there's a colored club. I'm in the neutral club because I don't stitch a lot on bright colored linen. They will offer pre-orders on their website. So you can go to colorandcotton.com and you can click on either like what's new, or you can choose the tab that talks about fabric. And if there's anything in stock on the website, you can order directly there. Sometimes they will do pre-orders. Usually the turnaround time on that is 6 to 8 weeks. Sometimes it's a little bit longer, depending on, just different factors that they run into. But anyway, you can order stuff there as well. And you can choose your cut. So if you want a yard or a fat half, fat quarter, things like that, that's available there as well. So, so to answer your question, yes, you can order a fat quarter, but you probably can't just type in something and, cream puff and just order it. It's not really like that. Their stuff is really nice. It sells out really quickly. So, but I do stitch on other fabric besides color and cotton. I really like Picture This Plus. Fox and Rabbit has some really great stuff. Seraphim has really great fabric. I really love Cedar River too. Cedar River's been one I've ordered from recently. So yeah, let's see. Somebody said they were going on a trip and they're going to be stitching on the plane. What can you bring that won't get confiscated by TSA? So I love to stitch on airplanes. As a matter of fact, usually when you get to pick your seat, I will always pick the seat on the left-hand side of the plane, the aisle seat, because I can stitch. I'm right-handed, so I can pull my thread and I don't have to worry about like accidentally elbowing somebody beside me. So I believe, and unless the TSA rules have changed, I haven't flown since January of this year. So unless something's changed, you can bring scissors. I believe the restriction is on the blade. The blade can't be longer than 4 inches. So I have never had any problems bringing my stitching on planes. I use, needles, and I bring scissors, and I've, like I said, never had a problem. I don't, obviously I don't bring, liquids or, really big scissors or shears. Now I will say, I wouldn't probably recommend bringing like really nice scissors, just in case you get the TSA agent that maybe is a little grumpy and wants to make a big deal out of something. But like I said, I've never had that happen. I think it's just as long as your blade length on your scissors is less than 4 inches, I think you're fine. What advice would you give someone who wants to switch from Aida to linen? And that's a really good question, because I used to stitch just on Aida. So I got started stitching on linen, and I even before linen, I went to an even weave, which was similar to linen, except there is an even weave. There's no slubs. And if you don't know what a slub is, slubs are kind of the fat little fibers. I don't know if you can see it. This is Color and Cotton. I'm sorry, no, it's not. It's not very slubby, but slubs are kind of like, if you look kind of right here, these little wider fibers. Sometimes those can be a little difficult because the thickness of your fiber is a little bit different. Some of them are real thin, and you get a slub that's a little fatter. I would recommend maybe trying an even weave. So an even weave, all your fibers are the same size. So it's very similar to stitching on Aida. You might try like a Lugana or an even weave, and maybe start in a larger count. So maybe start with a 25 or 28 count, and kind of get used to stitching on that. And the good news is, I mean, we know what size our little squares are supposed to be, right? And I would kind of just count. I usually stitch on 32 count 2/2, which means I use 2 strands of floss over 2 fibers on my fabric. So I would recommend that. Try that, and maybe start with a 25 or 28 count, so it's a little bit bigger, and you can see your squares and your fibers easily. And it probably isn't going to look great the first couple times, and that's okay. Just get in the habit of using that to count and starting to just get comfortable with stitching on it. And then as you get more comfortable, maybe switch from even weave or Lugana to linen. And then I used to always stitch on 28 count. I stitched on 28 count for a while, and I went to 32, and I've gone to 36. I've never stitched on 40, but 32 count for me is my sweet spot. I love 32. I like stitching with 2 strands. I know a lot of people don't. Some people just like 1 strand, and that's okay. That's what I think is the beauty of our craft, is there's so many different ways to do similar things. So some people can stitch on 40, 56 count, and your pieces are just so small and so precious. But there's really no rules. You can do what you want to do. But for me, 32 count 2 strands is my favorite. What is your favorite thing about this hobby? I love the versatility of it. I love the portability of it. I can stitch in the car. I can stitch in the plane. I can stitch in the waiting room. I can stitch while I wait to pick up my kid from school. It's portable, and I can take it places. The other thing I really love about this hobby is the friendships and connections I've made. I've met some of my dearest friends I met on Instagram or at retreats, and we talk every day. So I love that. I love seeing what other people are working on. I love being able to take something and kind of change the colors and make it feel like mine, and the personalization of it. And I love too that this hobby can be for everybody, no matter your price point. And what I mean by that is, you know, we pay anywhere from $8 to $15 typically for a chart. You can stitch on Aida, you can stitch on linen, you can stitch on hand-dyed, you can stitch with DMC, fancy floss. It can be as reasonably priced or as expensive as you want to make it, depending on your price point. It's not something where, you know, it's a very expensive hobby where everybody has to use the same things. You can make it as simple or as expensive as you want it to be, which I think takes the craft and makes it more accessible to people, regardless of, you know, maybe where they are financially as well, just depending on the variety of materials you want to use. How do you organize your thread? So if you watch my previous video, it is my how to start stitching with color and cotton. And in there, I show you how I organize my thread. So I have my thread on these kind of interlocking, twisting cable rings. They're stored like this. I keep them stored by color, not necessarily by designer. So in my reds, I've got Color and Cotton, Weeks, Gentle Arts, Classic Colorworks. They're all together. And then I bought some DMC cabinets, some wooden DMC cabinets at an estate sale. And they're the wooden cabinets, and they have clear acrylic drawers. And I have a drawer that has reds, and then my next drawer has pinks. My third drawer has oranges and yellows. Next one has greens, blues and turquoises, purples, and kind of like the multicolored stuff I'll show in my, or I showed in my previous video, and then blacks and browns, and then whites. And then my bottom drawer is like a miscellaneous drawer. And let me tell you about that. So let's say I just finished a project and I used these colors. So what I do is I will untwist this, I will take all these off, and I throw them in the miscellaneous drawer until my miscellaneous drawer gets really full. And then I take them and then I put them back on the rings. So that way I keep them separate for a reason. If I see later that I've missed a stitch, or I want to use the same floss palette, I know that I did not put my colors away yet. So they're in the miscellaneous drawer, so I can easily go and get those flosses and fix something if I need to fix something. Or if I decide that I want to stitch a small using the same colors, they're all still together. And then I would say maybe once a month or so, I go through the miscellaneous drawer, and then I take, you know, the colors and I put, you know, the pinks back on the pink ring and the greens on the green ring and things like that. So that's how I store my floss. Do you stitch with a hoop? Yes, I do. I don't use anything fancy. This is a 7-inch hoop. I get these at Hobby Lobby. They're like $2.99. And I have a ton of these hoops, and I keep them in a drawer, in an IKEA kind of dresser, and I just grab a new hoop. So, I usually buy like 3 or 4 of these at a time, because it's like, as I have whips or, you know, things going, then I'll grab a new hoop. But yes, I do stitch with a hoop. Also, something else I get asked, and I didn't get asked in this video, but I get asked it frequently in other videos. Do I take my stitching out of the hoop when I'm not stitching on it? And I don't. I've never really had it be a problem. So like this piece has been in this hoop for probably 2 days, 3 days, because I haven't worked on it. So when I'm not stitching it, I don't take it out of the hoop. So what does it look like? So that's a good point. So sometimes people, like when I take this out, I'll take it out right now. It is creased right here. We can see where the hoop was. So what I do is I put it right here on my ironing board. I give it just a very light mist with some spray starch. I just get this at Walmart. It's like less than $2. Just give it a quick spray. I turn my iron on and I go over it a couple times, and the crease comes right out and it's good as new. And then I reapply my hoop, and off to the races we go stitching. So that's how I get rid of the creases. Now, you can use steam. I use steam, and I will go over it really slowly several times to get all the creases out. Sometimes I get in a hurry and I just go over it pretty quick, but before I take it to the framer or anything like that, I really go over it nice and slow and smooth to make sure that all those wrinkles are out. Another starch I like is Best Press. I don't have any here right now, but you can get it at quilt shops. You can get it online, and it's really nice starch too. As you sew on your present whips, what are you anxious to get under your needle next? That's a really good question. I don't know. Sometimes I see something because I love Instagram. I love seeing what other people are working on. So sometimes I'll be in the middle of something and then I see something and I'm like, oh gosh, I can't wait to start that. Or I really want to start that next. I don't have anything that I'm really itching to start next. Although I did buy this on the D-Stash site last week, and it came a couple days ago. And it's out of print Blackbird, but it's Wild Rose journal cover. I think that's really pretty. So I really want to start that. I'm not in a hurry though. I really want to work a lot more on Mary Bovey, and I have another thing that I'm going to start probably tonight after I get this America one done. It's another small. So I pulled floss colors for that today, and I'll show it in just a little bit when I talk about where I get inspiration from. Do you purchase directly from Color and Cotton? Yes, I do. I purchase directly from their website, colorandcotton.com. You can choose the drop-down menu that talks about floss, and I go right there and I just order what I need. I also order, well, I shouldn't say I order what I need. When I find a color that I like, I'll order multiple skeins. So usually I order 2 to 3 of each color because I don't know what's going to be in stock next time I need it. So I order a couple extra skeins. How do you get so much done? I stitch a lot. I stitch in the car when I'm waiting. I stitch in the evenings. when I'm home. And I'm still playing with my family, or I'm still like, if we're watching a movie or something like that. So I'm still very much involved, but I just, have my hands doing something. What brand of needle do you use? I am not needle. I don't really have a strong preference. Most of the time, where is it? Most of the time I use these. These are from Hobby Lobby, the Artiste brand. You can see they're $1.49. There's like six needles in there. I like these because I like a longer needle. These are 1.5 inches. I also have these Bowens. I like these too. My only complaint is they're like 1.25 inches, and I like a little bit longer of a needle. But that's what I use. I'm not a needle snob. There are other things I'm really snobby about, but my needle is not one of them. But I don't typically bend needles. I know I've seen a lot of people posting, the way they stitch. If they stitch in hand, I think they bend needles. I've never bent a needle, not to my knowledge, but anyway, I'm not needle specific. So I usually just use these. I stitch with a 26 size needle on my 32 count. Sometimes I stitch with a 28, but yeah, just cheap Hobby Lobby needles. Okay. How do you manage knots while stitching? So I do a couple things. I do sometimes use thread wax or thread conditioner. I buy mine from Robot Mom Sews. You can search for her. She has an online shop. Her thread wax smells amazing. It's really great quality. I really like it. And what I do, let me grab it real quick. So here's one. This was one of their holiday ones. It's called Hansel and Gretel's House, and it is a really nice, like kind of peppermint gingerbread smell. Anyway, so this is what it looks like. It is, my light's bad, beeswax, and let me grab just a scrap of something here. So this is old. I'm not using this anymore. Okay, so I've got my strand of floss right here. So what I do is I lay my floss over my wax like this, and then I put my finger on it, holding it in, and I take it right here and I just pull it through a couple times. Okay, so I do that, and then I take my finger and I just run it through several times, just kind of trying to really work that wax into the fabric or to the thread. It doesn't leave any type of debris or waxy film or anything like that. I know I've seen people say that sometimes their thread wax will leave kind of chunks or things like that. I've never had that happen, but I also, like I said, I pull my wax through my thread through the wax a couple times, and then I really sit here probably 10 or 12 times, and I just kind of really work it in and work it through. I haven't had any problems with it. My thread smells nice afterwards too. So that's how I use that. And again, this is from Robot Mom Sews. She used to have stuff online where you could just go and order, and I think now she maybe makes these like twice a month and has a sale that way. It's been a while since I've ordered from her, because usually whenever I order 6 or 8 at a time, and they last a really long time, so I haven't needed to place an order in a while. But that's what I like. I know Lori Holt makes thread wax or thread conditioner. There's other people who make it too, so you might just try and see what you like. They're scented and non-scented as well. I don't really have a preference. The scented smells fine. How do you balance life, work, and stitching? Very carefully. Obviously my family comes first, and then my full-time job, and then I stitch whenever I can. It's a lot easier when during the school year, when Parker's in school and I have days off, because I'll get up and get him to school, and I'll climb in bed and stitch for an hour or so, take a shower, run errands, clean my house, empty the dishwasher, do laundry, and then I will, hop back and stitch a little bit more before I have to go pick him up. And then I stitch in the evening. So do you have a favorite online store? I don't. I try to support everybody equally. I buy from 123 Stitch. I buy from Lindy Stitches. I've bought, I did some market stuff. I got some stuff from Chantel at 141. I've bought Color and Cotton. They have an online needle workshop, so I've bought through them. I'm trying to think. Silver Needle is great. I'm trying to think who else I bought from. Colorado Cross Stitcher. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I said I reached my maximum recording limit. And I'm like, I'm not done. Okay. Is there a time of day you like to stitch? Anytime, as long as the light's good. In my full-time job, I work nights. So usually the night before I go back to work, I try and stick up really late. And so I'll do some late night stitching where, you know, everybody goes to bed 9, 10 o'clock, and I'll stay up till probably maybe 2 or 3. I've got my light, things like that. I turn on Netflix or a show or something and stitch my heart out all night. And that's great because it's uninterrupted. I don't have to get up to, you know, make anybody a snack or fold laundry or anything like that. So that's another reason why I get a lot of stitching done too, is sometimes on my nights where I'm off work, I stay up late just to maintain that sleep schedule. And I get quite a bit of stitching done there because it's just quite uninterrupted time. What types of patterns are you drawn to? I love stitching houses. I love stitching flowers. I love words. So as far as designers, I like Brenda Gervais, Blackbird. I love hands-on design. Stacey Nash. I like doing the animal crackers. Primrose. I think Primrose's charts are just adorable. But stuff like that. Do you use 1 or 2 strands? 2 strands on 32. Can you explain your thought process when doing conversions? So yeah, so I will see, and I'm going to use this as an example just because it's, like I said, it's on my desk. But, you know, I'll look at this chart and, you know, like kind of like I mentioned earlier, I'll look and I'm like, okay, I need a dark red, or I need a bright red, I need a yellow and a gold. And I'll just kind of go through my stash. I usually have the chart with me. And I kind of look and, you know, think like, okay, this is a deep kind of golden yellow, so I need a deep golden yellow. And I'll just look through my stash and see what kind of gives the aesthetic. I think sometimes, especially when you stitch with older charts and you're looking at the called fors and they're hand dyed, dye lots can change. And sometimes the dye lot that is pulled looks completely different than what the picture has, because it might be a pattern that's, you know, 10 years old and the dye lots have changed. Excuse me. So that's why whenever I pull colors, I usually look at the chart and not really so much look at what's called for, because the dye lots change. And obviously if I like the way the cover looks, I know that I want mine to look like that. So I tend to pull based on what my eye sees, how it perceives the color, not necessarily what the called for color is. Now, with that being said, sometimes I will take a chart, like the Winter Is Past from Blackbird, for example, and that chart uses a lot of blues and greens and grays, and those aren't colors that I have a lot of in my house. So what I did with that was I thought, well, what would match the aesthetic in my home? And so then I pulled colors, a brighter palette, and did a complete color conversion where my tulips are pinks and reds, and I did greens, and I did, you know, some blues and things like that to kind of give it a more aesthetically pleasing palette that would look good in my home. So that's kind of how I think through whenever I do floss conversions. How did I get started stitching? We talked about that. How can I keep my thread tails from showing? Okay, so this is where we're going to reference this chart again. So I just got done stitching this little flower down here. So let me show you what I do. So when I don't want my thread tails to show, and this is what I call a thread tail, is some people use the loop method. I don't use the loop method. But you can see, like, this is where I started. I tied my knot right here and came up. So what I do I call it burying my tails. But I will take, oops, there we go, some of my stitching, and I will take my needle and I will go back under some of the stitching to, so I don't have a tail showing. Now what that looks like is like this. Okay, so you can see I have my needle under my stitches here. Now, if you look on this side, it's not poking through at all, so you can't see that. So my needle essentially is between my fabric and these stitches. then I will pull it through. I'll pull it through here, and then I'll clip it. Where are my scissors? Here we go. And I clip it really close to the bottom. Then I'll go right here and I'll clip my piece here, and then it's done. So and that is what I do on everything pretty much. Now, like these little kind of quad, I don't want to call them confetti stitches, but these little pieces here, there's really not a lot to bury your tail under. So I do end up kind of just tying it off and doing that. Now I make sure whenever I iron it that I don't have my threads kind of laying on the floss too much. If I need to kind of use my nail or something and kind of tuck it under, that way your thread is on the same color here that you've stitched. Because especially if you're stitching on a lighter fabric, and let's say you have, let me find it. Let's say you have a red thread tail. Sometimes you can see the red thread through the lighter fabric. So I try to be really careful about that, and I try to bury my tails. Now in some of my earlier stitching, I didn't do that. And it's framed and you can see where I've traveled. I kind of am of the mindset that when you know better, you do better. I'm not gonna go back and take that out. That's ridiculous for me. Some people will, and that's fine. It's totally personal preference. But I just accept it and move on and just kind of chalk it up to being something that I stitched a long time ago. So, so that is how I bury my thread tails. I hope that helped. Do you garden? I try to. I plant tomatoes every year. I basically have like a salsa garden. I do tomatoes in a variety of different kinds, jalapenos and onions, and I do that every year. I tried doing squash and zucchini, and we had a lot of rain that year, and we had some like blossom rot. So they looked really, they were very promising, and then they never really grew, and they were they were a disaster. I also did strawberries. I usually do strawberries every year, and the last couple of years, I really haven't gotten a ton of strawberries back, and it's because my son picks them straight out of the garden. They don't get washed, and he eats them. So I do garden a tiny bit, but not anything that I feel like I'm an expert to talk about. We talked about tips for stitching on linen. Do you sew? I sew little pillows and stuff together. I did sew this project bag, and I use that term very loosely. I cut little squares. I cut them down and kind of made this panel, and like my stuff doesn't match up, and that's okay. But I gave them to my mom, and my mom kind of turned it into this bag for me. So I can work a sewing machine okay, but I'm not real great at it. So I don't make my own project bags or anything like that. Purses, But, you know, I can sew a straight line to make a pillow and things like that. How much, I have to tell you a funny story. So in my previous video, I, opened it up to questions. So that night I started getting questions kind of rolling in and everything. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to answer these and make a video. And my husband goes, what are you making a video about? And I told him that I had opened it up to questions and that people were, starting to ask some good questions. And so he goes over and kind of reads the comment section, and immediately I get a notification, and he had left a comment. And I was like, did you really just leave a comment? And he's like, oh, no. Anyway, he left a comment, and his comment said, how much do you spend monthly on stitching related materials? And I just laughed. I don't spend a ton monthly on things. I am part of the Color and Cotton Fabric of the Month Club. That's about $28. I would say I probably spend maybe around $100 a month. It depends. I mean, if it's a market release month or something, then that goes up. But I have plenty of stuff to stitch. I've got this third drawer here is completely full of fabric. I have plenty of floss. I have bukus of charts. So I really don't feel like I spend that much monthly on things. And then, like I said, if it's market or something, then, you know, I might splurge a little bit, but, I believe my exact answer to him was, that's none of your business. So anyway, not a ton. Then I had a couple questions that were like more personal questions. Tell us about your EMS career. So I'll talk a little bit about that. I started working in emergency medical services in 2008. I was an EMT. So if you don't know the difference between an EMT and paramedic, think about the difference between like a nurse and a doctor. One is more school. Paramedic is 2 years of school, and EMT is 4 to 6 months, depending on where you go. Now, I did go to college. I went to the University of Oklahoma. I am a Sooner fan. And I was a semester away from graduating, and I decided that I really didn't love my field of study. I was going to be a teacher. I wanted to be a high school history teacher. And I did all the things. I did my student teaching, and I just kind of realized that close to graduation that this was not something I wanted to do. When I was in college, I worked in an emergency room as a unit secretary. I'm very organized, and I really liked being there. So I did a ride out with the paramedics, and I fell in love with it. So I went to EMT school. I got my EMT and immediately started working, and I love it. I love being the first person to get to help somebody on their bad day. Not every call is, you know, something critical. Sometimes people call 911 for toe pain, or they threw up, they fell. I mean, it's the gamut. You go from that stuff to, you know, somebody who's actively having a heart attack, somebody who is in cardiac arrest, somebody who's having a stroke, car wrecks, house fires, all the things. In 2012, I went to paramedic school. Well, I guess it was 2010 I went to paramedic school. I graduated in 2012. And I love it. Being a paramedic is great. There's a lot of really great things you can do. I can intubate people. I can do surgical crikes, where I cut a hole in their neck and put a tube down in case they're not able to protect their own airway. Cardiac medications, 12-lead EKG interpretation, all sorts of things. It's awesome. I love it. I truly feel like, aside from being my husband's wife and my son's mom, I feel like the Lord meant for me to be a paramedic. I love people, and I love getting to help people. So right now I work as a supervisor. I supervise 8 people on my shift. We operate 4 ambulances. And again, like I said, we work the night shift. I have a really great team, a lot of really awesome people. And one of the things I do as a supervisor is I carry whole blood. So what is that? Whole blood is, it's a unit of blood. It is low titer O positive blood, and I go to every bad call. So I go to rollover car accidents. I go to car accidents where people are ejected. I go to shootings, stabbings, assaults. I go to a lot of bad stuff. And patients who are actively bleeding and losing blood, once their heart rate and their blood pressure drop below a certain threshold, I can administer the blood to them. So basically, I'm riding in the back of the ambulance, infusing blood into these critically ill and injured patients. We get them to a trauma center, and the whole blood has really improved the outcomes of a lot of these patients, because once they get to the ER, it's several minutes before they're able to get blood down from the lab and get those patients the blood that they need. So us being able to give that to patients in the field has drastically increased their chances of survival, which means that, you know, their families get them for another Christmas or things like that. So that stuff is really important to me, that we're actually hands on the ground making a difference in people's lives where they are being able to go home to their families. How many children do you have, and how old are they? So my husband and I got married 9 years ago, and he had 2 boys from a previous marriage. They currently are 17, he'll be 18 in July, and 16, he just turned 16 last month. And then together we have a 5-year-old little boy. So I live in a house full of boys, except for my 2 little wiener dogs, Molly and Penny, which was another question. Do you have any pets? I have 2 dachshunds, Molly and Penny. Penny is 6 years old. She's a black and tan miniature dachshund, short hair. And Molly is 10 years old, and she is a red short hair. She's my girl. I had Molly when I was single, and yeah, she's the best. How did you and your husband meet? So we actually met on a 911 call. My husband is a firefighter paramedic, and I've known him for a long time just from running calls and everything, and yeah, we met on a 911 call. So that was kind of fun. And we work at the same fire department. So that's really great because we get to see each other on calls. And one of my ambulances is actually stationed at his fire station. So when I'm there taking care of my employees and stuff, you know, sometimes I get to see him as well. So it's been great. So anyway, okay, I think I answered everything. If you think of anything else, feel free to leave it in the comments. Feel free to send me a message. I'm happy to answer those to the best of my ability. I hope you found this informative. I'm so sorry this video is so long. I think this might be my longest video I've ever done. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Oh, you know what? I forgot. Let me show you what I'm working on next, because I just talked earlier about where I get inspiration from and how I apply that in my cross stitch, and I'm going to show you that real quick. So stand by. Okay, so let me show you where I got some inspiration. So this is a reusable shopping bag that I got. I said I think I got it at TJ Maxx, but I realized I got it at Marshall's or Home Goods. Anyway, here's the bag. Super cute. I love these bags. I literally use these all the time. I keep them in my car, and so whenever I go grocery shopping, I bring my bags, and then they put all my groceries in my bags. I use them in the car when we go on vacation for snack bags, and then I usually bring 1 or 2 extra. And if we're not like at an Airbnb or something, then I'll put like dirty laundry in the bag. Whenever we go to the pool, I bring those for, you know, towels and goggles and sunscreen and all the things. So I have a ton of these bags. Anyway, I saw this bag and I thought it was so pretty. So of course I snatched it up. They're like 99 cents. So that way if something happens to it, you can just pitch it. Anyway, I love this bag. So I saw this and immediately came home and pulled out ribbons and bows from Emily Call. So can you guess where we're going with this? Here is my floss palette that I pulled. This is going to be so pretty. So I have let me turn around this way. So I have a kind of a bright red and a lighter. I have a white, a light blue, and a dark blue. And these are going to be patriotic bows. So I'm really excited. I'm probably going to stitch on maybe a little bit of like a medium to darker linen so my white will show up. But let me show you the colors. So this is Harlequin. It is a really kind of a bright red. Then we are going to use Coral Trout for the lighter. Old Lace. Winterland. And Serenade. So we're going to use those. And if you look at the bows, you can tell. So like there's a darker color and a lighter color. And then on the bow here, it gets darker where, you know, you see like the inside. So that's why I did a dark blue and a light blue and a dark red and a light red, or a bright red and a light red, to kind of account for some of the shading that we're going to use there. So that's kind of my next plan. As soon as I finish this America one, I will start on this for my patriotic display. So anyway, now we're done. So thank you guys so much for watching. Like I said, leave a comment below. If you like my channel, make sure you're liking and subscribing. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. Happy stitching.